Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, which is YOMA Daf Mem. We begin 4 lines from the top of the Amid, and we're in the midst of a sugya of Hagrola. The Kohen Gadol approaches both goats. One was positioned to his right, one to his left. And he has the kalfi, the lottery box, from which he picks 2 lots. One had the Shem of Hashem engraved in it, La Hashem. The other one said La Azazel. He takes 1 lot, places on one goat, the other one on top of the other goat. Is Hagrola Mi'akev? We had a discussion yesterday, actually a machlekes. Now, there are several steps to Hagrola. One is called Aliyah, lifting, picking the lotteries out of the lottery box. And then there's the Hanocha, placement, actually placing down those lots on top of the goats. Once you've determined and designated through the picking process which goat is considered Lashem, which Lazazel, corresponding to the lottery found in that hand. So if he has the Lashem in his right, that goat will become Lashem. Lazazel on his left, that determines the fate of the goat to his left. That's been established during the time of the Hagrola. The question is about Hanocha, placement. It's a mitzvah to place the lots on top of the goats. The pasuk v'nosan al shnei atzirim is meant to place it, but is it ma'akev? No, all agree Hanocha, placement is not ma'akev. It's only a mitzvah. Rashi explains it's already been determined. It's already been designated. This one's Lashem, this one's Lazazel. Through the picking process, you've accomplished that. And therefore he says, placement is only secondary, it's a mitzvah, but not mi'akev. Hanocha loy mi'akev. What about the actual Hagrola, which we call Aliyah? Picking the lots, picking the tickets out of the box. Is that mi'akev or not? We had a discussion yesterday, several approaches. We have Shitas Rabbi Yana who says, according to all Shitas, whether Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, Shitas Rabbi Nechemia, we have a discussion amongst themselves regarding which avodas throughout Yom Kippur are crucial, are ma'akev. So, according to all Shitas, says Rabbi Yanai, when it comes to Hagrola, when it comes to Aliyah, taking the lots out of the box, it is mi'akev. And the reason was, because even according to Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, that something done out of the Kodesh HaKadosh was not so crucial, but here it's different because the Torah repeats itself twice. Asher Allah to tell you. And the concept of chukah, absoluteness, unwavering, unyielding, applies to Hagrola as well. You can't do without it. Says the Gemara 4 lines from the top, we're going to have a kash on that. From a brayso, we seem to see, that Hagrola is only a mitzvah, not mi'akev. Doesn't invalidate the procedure. Tashma, come and listen to the right. It says in the brayso, mitzvah lahagro. Uleisvados, there was a mitzvah to do the Hagrola, to lift the lots out of the box. Uleisvados, this is another thing, to do the vidoy on the Soir La'azazel, the Soir HaMishtaleach. But if he misses any of these, Lo Higro, he failed to do the Hagrola, V'lo Yisvada, or didn't do the vidoy, the confession on the Soir La'azazel, kosher, everything's okay. It's a Hatchila mitzvah, but it's not Me'akev. We see clearly that even Hagrola is not Me'akev. It's a kasha Rabbi Yanai. Says the Gemara, perhaps here as well, just as yesterday you answered, that when the first brisa spoke about mitzvah lahagrol, it's only a mitzvah lachatchil, but not makib b'diavad, it didn't mean the first stage of hagrola, picking the lots out of the box. Lahaniach was what it meant when it said mitzvah lahagrol. The placement on the goats, that's only a mitzvah. Perhaps here as well. Hachanami lahaniach. When the Brisa says mitzvah lahagro, doesn't mean the hagrola itself, the determination. It means the placement of the hagrolas on the izim, on the goats. And according to and that is certainly not mi'akev. Says the but you can't say that. Why? Let's move on to the next part of the Brisa. Rabbi Shimon Omer. Lo higro kasha. Rabbi Shimon responds to Tanakama. He says, Lo higro kasha. I grant you that. If he missed Hagrola, it's fine. As long as he names the karbanis verbally. Hashem, Azazel, even without a hagrola, it's okay. He accomplishes it. Lo yisvada pas. I maintain that if he missed vidui on the Sar Mishtaleach, it's possible. I think more later we'll explain the basis for this machlekes regarding vidui. We're not going to focus on that at this point. Rather, we're going to focus on the first part of Rav Shimon's statement. Tanakama said, mitzvah lahagro, but if you missed it, it's kosher. Rav Shimon responds and says, yes, indeed, lo higrul kosher. If you missed the hagrola, I agree it's kosher. Now, what does the brisa mean when it said mitzvah lahagro? What did Rav Shimon mean when he said lo higrul kosher? So you're going to tell me he's not speaking about the hagrola. Hagrola is me'akim. He's speaking about the hanocha, right? My lo higrul. What does he mean when he says lo higrul? He means if he missed the hanocha, the hagrola is me'akim. It's only the hanocha, which is already after the fact. The placement of the tickets on the goats, that's not me'akim. We imply from here, however, that hagrola is ma'akiv, right? So even according to Reb Shimon, you're going to have to say hagrola is ma'akiv. Only hanocha is not ma'akiv, but hagrola is. Mechlad Reb Shimon savar hagrola mi'akva. Do you mean to say that according to Reb Shimon, hagrola is ma'akiv? We know that clearly to be wrong. V'atanya meis echad man. Reb Shimon says, suppose you have a pair of goats, one Hashem, one Azazel, and one of them died. Maybe chayveiroi sheloi v'hagrola. You just get another one as a replacement. You don't need to do another hagrola. So if the Sar Hashem died, just bring another one and consider that to be the Sar Hashem. You don't have to redo the hagrola. Did Reb Shimon? It's pretty clear. According to Reb Shimon, hagrola is not crucial. It's not vital to the success of the procedure. So your suggestion, as far as interpreting the brisa in your way, just doesn't work. Once again, the brisa says mitzvah lahagro. Rav Shimon responds, yeah, I agree, mitzvah lahagro. There seems to be a kasha on Rabbi Yana who says hagrola is not just a mitzvah. It's not just a good suggestion. It's vital, it's crucial, it's ma'akiv. They won't respond in 1 second. Let's redefine the meaning of the brisa. Let's reinterpret these words. Hagrola here doesn't mean picking the tickets. That's me'akiv. When the brisa says mitzvah lahagro, we're speaking about placement, putting those tickets on the goats, which is only a mitzvah. Now, when Rav Shimon responds and says, I agree, it's a mitzvah lahagro, we assume, the Gemara assumes when two people are having a discussion, a debate, a machlekes, they're speaking the same language, they're referring to the same thing. So when the Tanakama spoke about mitzvah lahagro, he meant mitzvah lahaniach. We can safely assume that Reb Shimon in his response was referring to the same thing. Mitzvah lahagro means mitzvah lahaniach. But hagrola is ma'akiv. We know that not to be so. We have a brisa which clearly tells us that according to Reb Shimon, hagrola is not ma'akiv. So apparently, your interpretation of the brisa is incorrect. You can't say the word lahagro means hanocha. Rather, it means kipshutoi, it means lifting those tickets out of the box. And Tanakama holds it's only a mitzvah. Reb Shimon agrees with that. And it's a kasha. Rabbi Yana says it's me'akiv, it's not just a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, I'll answer you as follows. The Tanakama, when he used the words mitzvah lahagro, he certainly was not referring to picking the tickets. That's more than just a mitzvah. He was referring to hanoch. Oh, that's the case. How do you explain Reb Shimon? Rabbi Shimon lo yada mai ka'ami rabban. Rabbi Shimon was uncertain as to the exact intention of the Tanakama. He wasn't sure what they meant when they said mitzvah lahagro. Phase 1 of the hagrola, picking the tickets, or phase 2, putting down the tickets on those goats. So since he was unsure, he chose to use a general term. And this is how he responded to them. You say hagrola is only a mitzvah, not me'akiv? Let me just address what you're saying. I'm not sure what you mean. Let me address it on all accounts. If when you say hagrola is only a mitzvah, you meant the actual hagrola, meaning picking those tickets, then right on. I agree with you. I only have one issue with you. The second thing about the vidu that you said, it's not mi'akiv. I want to challenge you on that. Paligna alaychu b'chada. I disagree with you with respect to one issue, one halach, vidu. I agree by hagrola, it's not mi'akiv. Rav Shimon himself holds hagrola is not mi'akiv. But vidu, I disagree. So that's if you meant hagrola. Hagrola de kamrisu hanyu hanach. But, however, if when you said hagrola is only a mitzvah, you meant not the hagrola, you meant the hanach. Well, that's already after the hagrola. That's not mi'akiv. Implying that hagrola is mi'akiv. Paligna alaycha b'tarti. In that case, I have two issues with you. I disagree on two accounts. Number one, the vidui, of course. You say it's not mi'akiv. I hold it is. We more later will explain the reason for the machlekes by vidui. That's one thing. And I have a second machlekes as well when it comes to hagrola. You say it's mi'akiv. I disagree. So we pretty much answered the kasha. The kasha was that we have a brayso which says mitzvah lahagro, indicating that it's only a mitzvah to pick out those tickets, whereas Rabbi Yani says it's mi'akiv. Answers the Gemara. Tanakama meant mitzvah lahaniach, but of course hagrola is mi'akiv. Tashma, we'll have another kasha from another brayso. The brayso says par ma'akiv is asur. The par holds up, invalidates the sur. V'soyer ein ma'akiv is a par. But a sur cannot invalidate, can't hold up the par. We're speaking about in reference to the matonis dam, the applying of dam in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So if things were done out of order, is it still okay? Or it depends. If the sur was out of order, he jumped ahead of the par, then it's no good. If the par jumps ahead of the sur, it's fine. Before we continue, let's take a look at Rashi, who gives us a rundown of the schedule in the Beis HaMikdash. So you'll find Rashi where the lines widen. The first times the lines widen, 7 lines above that, you'll see the words par ma'akev es hasar. Explains Rashi, im hikdim achas min avodas shel sar ha'amu charis l'shel par. If it decided to advance the later avodah of a sar to the par, to do it before the par, v'asa koydem lapar, then it's no good. It's meant to be done in order. Ha'par shu roi likadem ma'akv upais, the par which is meant to precede this process. The par which is meant to be before the sar invalidates the avodah of the sar. It's too early. It doesn't work. I'll have to redo it after the par. Now Rashi gives us a rundown of the avodas. V'seder avodesein kachi, the parsh. V'tchila misvad al par v'dirish. As we learned back on Daf Lamed, hey, first thing he'll do is approach the par and say the first vidu. V'achach margulas al sar, and then, as we learned yesterday, he does the hagrola on the 2 seirim. V'achach misvad al par v'disheni. Then he approaches the par again, does another video on account of his fellow kayhanim. V'shachtai does a shchit on the par. U'machnes kafel machta. Reisnes akteris al eish. And reads akteris in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Then goes back to his par. V'noisem midam par al kaparis. Takes the dam of the par and applies it in the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the Aron. V'achach shechet es hasor. Then does shchita on the sor. Which one? The one that was Lashem chatos. V'noisem mimenu al kaparis. And applies some of its dam onto the kaparis. So this is the first phase of Nesinas Dam. In the Kodesh HaKadoshim, par and then sor. Then proceeds to the next stage of Nesinas Dam. V'achach nesen midama par ala paroiches. He goes to the Heichel, takes dam par, applies it to the paroiches. V'achach midama sor. Then does the same with the sor. This was phase 2 of the Hazoyas Dam. First the Kodesh HaKadoshim, par v'sor. Then over to the Heichel, par v'sor. And then phase 3, v'achkach ma'arav damim v'noisen al mizbeach hapnimi. Then he mixes up the dam and puts it onto the mizbeach hapnimi. Phase 3. So phase 1, kodesh hakadoshim, par, and then sur. Phase 2, heichal, baruchas, par, and then sur. Phase 3, on the mizbeach hazav. But everything is preceded by the hagrala. So it's hagrala, and then he goes over to do the nisinas dam, kodesh hakadoshim, heichal, mizbeach hapnimi. Let's go back to the Bryce. Says the Gemara again, Toshma, par ma'akev es hasar. Suppose he did the avoid of the sur before he did the par. The par invalidates it. It holds it up. It doesn't allow it to work. V'soyer in ma'akev es par. But if he jumped ahead with the par, he put it ahead of the sur doesn't get in the way. An easy way to remember this would be the par is a big animal, the sur is a small goat. So the big one holds up the small one, but the small one, the sur, doesn't hold up the big one. But Matana Shebefnim was speaking about the applications of dam relevant to the Kodesh HaKadosh. If things were done out of order in this manner, so par is ma'akav sur, and not in the reverse. Now let's analyze the Bryce. So this is the end of the Bryce. End quote. Continues the Bryce. The Gemara. Bishleima par ma'akav es hasur. What does the Bryce mean? The par is ma'akav es hasur. Once again, that means should he proceed with soyer before he got to the par? He jumped ahead of the par with the sur. It's ma'akav. What does this mean? The aktem elis soyer mikame par. If he took the dam of the sur and applied that dam in the Kodesh HaKadoshim before he did so to the par, it's out of order. It's meant to be par and then sur. It's worthless. That explains the first part of the Bryce. Let's proceed to the second part of the Bryce. Elasoir ein ma'akev es par. But when the Bryce says sur is not ma'akev par, meaning should he choose to do par before the sur, out of place, he went ahead of the sur. It's okay. It's not good l'chatchila, but the evidence works. Mind you, what are we speaking about? Which specific avodah did he do out of order? Ilema, shall we say the actim matonis de par behech, that he preceded the matonis dam of the par in the heichal, which was phase 2. He did it before he got around to doing the sur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We're trying to find a chatimsa where he took the par and put it ahead of the sur. So suppose it happened during phase 2 of the matonis dam, meaning he applied the dam of the par in the heichal before he got a chance to do the sur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim phase 1. Mikame matonis the sur bifnim. He was meant to do par v'sur in Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then after par v'sur in Kodesh HaKadoshim proceed to par v'sur in the heichal. This fellow was impatient. He went straight from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, took his dam apar, went to the heichal without bringing in the sur, which was a proper order. What does the Bryce say? If he jumps ahead with the par, it's okay. How can it be okay? Chukuk sipu. The pasuk says a lashon of chukah, absoluteness. You can't just deviate from the proper order of the avodas. Certainly, when we're speaking about avodas relevant to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, all agree. Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees. Discussion yesterday between Rabbi Yehuda and Chaim, all agree that this concept of chukah, absoluteness, applies to things done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Here, things were out of order. Things pertaining to the Kodesh HaKadoshim were out of order because he jumped ahead with the par before doing the soyer in Kodesh HaKadoshim. That certainly is ma'akev. You can't suggest otherwise. So what is the Bryce speaking about? You can't be speaking about this case. Elalav, apparently we have to suggest an alternate scenario. The akdim matonis the par b'fnim. What happened was, he jumped ahead with the par. He took the dam of the par, applied the dam in Kodesh HaKadoshim, mikami hagrola. Before he did the hagrola, he was meant to do the hagrola on the 2 seirim, and only then take the dam apart and bring it to Kodesh HaKadoshim. He reversed the order. He jumped ahead with the par. He did it ahead of the Hagrola on the Sar. And the Brisa tells us it's okay, but the evidence is fine. Says the Gemara, the fact that the Brisa says that it's fine, the fact that it's out of order. What's out of order? The Hagrola was out of order. That's okay. Sidra loy ma'akva. What does that tell you about the value of the Hagrola? If it can be done out of order, apparently it's not so weighty. It doesn't have so much value. Ikra Hagrola nami lo me'akva. The actual Hagrola itself is also not so critical and vital. Oh, we finally arrived at our kasha. There's a kasha on Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai told us Hagrola is mi'akiv according to all Shitas. Rabbi Yehuda Nechemia. We have a brisa which seems to tell us Hagrola, that's a mitzvah, but it's not mi'akiv. How do we see that? Because the brisa tells us that the Seder Hagrola is not mi'akiv, apparently because the actual Hagrola itself is not something so vital and critical. It's a mitzvah, but it's not mi'akiv. Says the Merloi, no, let's present another scenario with which to explain the brisa. What was done out of order? Not the Hagrola. Hagrola is mi'akiv. Just as the essence of the Hagrola is mi'akiv, the order is mi'akiv as well. Rather, the brisa is speaking about the following case. Loi, the agdim matonos the par b'mizbeach. He went ahead to the third phase of the matan dam. We had the Kodesh Kedoshim, we had the Heichel, and the third phase was applying the dam on the mizbeach apnimi, on the gold mizbeach. So he jumped ahead with the par. The agdim matonos the par b'mizbeach. He applied the dam of the par onto the mizbeach. Mikami matonos the sar b'Heichel. Before we got to the second phase of the sar, he was meant to do par v'soyer in that order on the pareches, and then only then go over to the mizbeach hazav. This fellow jumped ahead. He went straight from par on the pareches, phase 2, to par on the mizbeach, phase 3, without doing the soyer, phase 2 of the soyer. So here he put the par ahead of the soyer, and the Brisa said it's okay. So now related to Hagrola. There's no kasha on Rabbi Yanai. It doesn't pertain to our sugya of Hagrola. We're not speaking about doing Hagrola out of order. Rather, we're speaking about doing matan dam out of order. And it works. Why? Rabbi Yehuda, we're following Rabbi Yehuda. The Omar, Dvorim HaNasin, the big day love and bechutz, loy makri, he holds. Although the pasuk says, Chukah means absoluteness. You can't rearrange the schedule of Yom Kippur. Everything's meant to be in its proper place, proper order. Says Rabbi Yehuda, but only Dvorim HaNasin, big day love and bifnim. Only something which is meant to be done wearing a white begad, unique to Yom Kippur, and in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Only that's crucial. Only that's mi'akiv. But things which are done b'chutz, even though they're big they love him, doesn't have the same value, and it's not mi'akiv. And therefore, in this case, although he reshuffled the matan dam, he did the par on the mizbeach before the surah on the pareches, they're outside. What do you mean outside? Outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and they're not mi'akiv. Says, well, we can't suggest that that's pshat in the brisa, because we have two words in the brisa which indicate otherwise. The brisa, right in the beginning, said, this whole discussion is pertaining to things which are done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I'm not speaking about things done in the Heichel, on the Pareches, on the Mizbech. That's not the topic of discussion here. Oh, so now we have to revert to our earlier suggestion. Apparently we're speaking about jumping ahead with a par. Jumping ahead of the Hagrola. Hagrola is meant to take place before the matan dam of the par in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. This fellow leapfrogged. He did the par in the Kodesh HaKadoshim before the Hagrola. And what does the Brisa say? It's okay. A sar before par, that's a problem. If he did the avodah pertaining to a sar before he did the par, in that case, it's possible. But the par ahead of the sar, that's okay. If he did the Nesinas Dam, the Kodesh HaKadoshim before the Hagrola, the sar, it's okay. And the Gemara concluded, if Seder is not me'akiv, if the Seder of the Hagrola doesn't really invalidate things, apparently the Hagrola itself doesn't have that much value, and it's not me'akiv either. Elohamani Rabbi Shimon. Says, well, you know what? Remember, we had a third sheet. We had a sheet introduced today, Rabbi Shimon, who says, you're right. It's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon holds Hagrala is not Me'akiv. Rabbi Yanai was not addressing Rabbi Shimon's sheet. He was speaking on other sheets. This brisa which says Hagrala is not Me'akiv, just as the Seder is not Me'akiv, we assume the Hagrala itself is not Me'akiv, is Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, who we learned earlier today, holds Hagrala is not Me'akiv. As long as you name the animals, even verbally, that's okay. Another pshat. This brisa can be found in Rabbi Yehuda as well. Rabbi Yehuda who holds that Hagrala is Ma'akiv. True. Out of order is not Me'akiv. If you do the Hagrala at the wrong time, that's okay. Hagrala Me'akiv. But the actual Hagrala itself is Me'akiv. Don't compare one to the other. The one that Havimini felt, well, if the Seder is not Me'akiv, then the Hagrala itself is not Me'akiv. No, not necessarily. Who says they're connected one to the other? Now the Teisus Shanu explains, a very nice pshat. He says, why would Hagrala be Me'akiv? Yeah, we spoke about the Torah repeating itself, but he adds another element. He says it's called Tzoirech Pnim. After all, the Hagrala is meant to prepare the Chatas, which is taken into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So even Rabbi Yehuda, who says that only things in the Kodesh HaKadoshim are Me'akiv, but not things outside, will agree that Hagrala, since it's serving the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's Tzoirech Pnim, it's coming to identify which behemoth is going to be the Chatas taken into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Dam at least. It's called Tzoirech Pnim, Kip Pnim Dami. We treat it like an Avodas Pnim, like an interior Avodah. So more than the Havmina felt, if that's the case, if we assign it such value, and still we see that the Brisa says Seder of the Hagrala doesn't really concern us, and apparently it doesn't really have much value. And we don't say Tzorech Pnim Ki Pnim Dami, and it has a din like Avodas Pnim, it's Me'akiv. The Gemara Maskana says, yeah, you can differentiate between Seder and the essence. On the one hand, we say Tzorech Pnim, it's serving the Chatas, which is going to be transported to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. This Hagrala is serving Pnim, and it has the halacha like Pnim. It's Me'akiv, if ignored and neglected completely. But when it comes to Seder, if it's out of order, simply being out of sequence doesn't really concern us. Why? Think of it for a second. The Hagrala, as we're explaining it, is not valuable by its own right. Its value is attributed to the fact that it's preparing the carbon for later. So true, the essence of the Hagrala is Me'akiv. It's a required hachana for that chatas. But perhaps out of order, that's not so terrible. Yeah, l'chatchila, it's meant to follow a certain sequence, but the evet, if it's out of order, as long as you have it somewhere in the process, as long as you've accomplished that hachana, you've prepared that chatas for pnim, you're okay. Because again, it's not needed for its own sake. It's simply as a preparatory act. It's coming as an achana. So if it's here or there, as long as at the end of the day, the end result is it made that chatas, that works. So that's the way Teisus Shanu explains the Maskana of the Gemara. And at the end of the day, we don't have a kasha or Rabbi Yanai it tells us that Hagrala is Me'akiv. We had 3 sheets, 3 kashas, 1 kasha yesterday, another 2 brises today. And the Gemara concludes that we don't really have a kasha or Rabbi Yanai. Perhaps it's true that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hagrala is Me'akiv. Certainly we introduced in Rishita with Rabbi Shimon, who holds that Hagrala is not Me'akiv. We actually had another machlekes between Rabbi Shimon and the Tanakama regarding Vidui. Now the Gemara is going to dwell on that. Whereas the Tanakama holds Vidui is not Me'akiv. We're speaking about the Vidui applied to the Sarah Mishtaleach. Lo Yisvad is kosher. Rabbi Shimon agrees. He says Vidui, that's a vital component of the Sarah Azazal's procedure and is Me'akiv. He needs to have that Vidui said on the Sarah Azazal. V'azo tamayu, says the Gemara, both those shittas will follow their respective opinions included in the next price. Which shittas? Again, we're speaking the shaila whether vidui and the Sarah Mishtalech is Ma'akiv, that's Reb Shimon, or it's not Ma'akiv, that's Tanakam. The Sani will learn on Brisa Yomad Chai Afnei Hashem L'chaper Aleph. This is a pasuk describing the Sar La'azaz. So the pasuk in full reads like this: V'asoir asher olav hagor la'azazel yo'amad chai, should be positioned alive. L'fnei Hashem l'chaper olav l'shalach oisoi la'azazel hamidbar. Let's take a look at Rashi on top of the Amid. Yo'amad chai al karach lamdenu. Apparently, says Rashi, the pasuk is coming to teach us. She mace, if that Sar La'azazel dies, sha'at atzorach lavi acher, you have to replace it with another one. D'ilai, because if that wasn't the case, l'mai also, what's the point of the pasuk? What's the pasuk coming to tell you? If not, that you must replace it when it's gone. Im toimah shlei shalchenu ad la'achar matan dam. The point of the pasuk is simply to tell you, don't send them away to the midbar until after you do the matan dam of its counterpart, of its comrade, of the Sar L'Hashem. Is that the point of the pasuk? Keep it there. Throughout the process of the matan dam, lichtav YOMA l'fnei Hashem l'chaper olav. That would have been enough. Have him stand until the kapar. Chai lamali. Why add the word chai? Ella. Apparently the pasuk is telling you you have to replace it if it dies. She'emei sorach lavi acher. If he dies, you have to replace it. Rashi continues. Vad malsa is kikoi liyos chai. Until what point is that applicable? Ad shaz matadam shel chaveri. The Sar La'azazel has to be alive until he experiences he witnesses the matan damim of his friend, of his counterpart, of his parallel Sar, the Sar L'Hashem. The Sivl Chaper. It says he has to stand there. L'chaper olav. L'chaper means asher chaper b'dam shel chaveri. It's interesting, even though you would think the pasuk is speaking about the La'azazel. Yom ad chayil Hashem chaper olav, kapara which pertains to him. Says the Gemara, no. Rabbi Yehuda holds l'chaper olav is referring to the kapara applied to the Sar L'Hashem, the other one in the pair, and the Sar La'azazel has to be there, has to experience, have to jointly experience the matan dam. It sort of applies to the Azazel as well. Aval mashas matan dam aveila, but once you pass matan dam, aval bishadayin lo yisvada. If we say that even though he hadn't yet done the video on the Sar La'azazel, he's only passed the kapara's dam on the L'Hashem, but hadn't yet confessed on the La'azazel. If he should die at that point, there's no need to replace him with another one. Apparently, says Rabbi Yehuda, vidui on the Sar La'azazel is not mi'akiv. So even if he dies at that point before vidui, it's okay. Klal Yisrael receives its kapara. Look, there was already a hagrala took place, which determined this one's Hashem, this one's Azazel. As long as the Sar La'azazel lives long enough to experience the matan dam, that's the ikka kapara, Klal Yisrael gets the kapara. So once again, says the Gemara on the top line, Yom ad chai fnei Hashem, the kapara olav ad masa yez zakuk lamed chai, until a point. So the Sar La'azazel have to be alive. Ad shas matan dam shel chaveroi. He has to experience the matan dam of the Sar L'Hashem de Rabbi Yehuda. But vidui, that's not mi'akiv. Rabbi Shimon Omer, no, vidui is mi'akiv. Ad shas vidui dvarim, he has to be alive. Up until and including the point of vidui dvarim on that Sar La'azazel. But my commitment, what's the basis of this machlokes? Because the Sani was learned in a brayso l'chaper. Pasuk says he has to be around l'chaper olav. What does l'chaper olav mean? The kapara's dam on the L'Hashem, or the kapara's dvarim, the video, and the La'azazel. The kapara's damim akasim adam. Speaking about the kapara's dam on the L'Hashem. V'cheinu omer, as we find in the pasuk. V'chila mechaper zakodesh, when he completed doing the kapara's dam on the Sar L'Hashem. So we draw a parallel. Mala halan v'kapara's damim, just as over there the term kapara is in reference to applying the dam of the Sar L'Hashem. Afkan v'kapara's damim, div Rabbi Yehuda. Same thing here. L'chaper olav, referring to the pasuk here, Yom ad chai fnei Hashem chaper olav, describing the Sar La'azazel lifespan, is referring to the kapara's damim, which he has to experience, the kapara's damim of the L'Hashem. But once he's past that, he can die. You don't have to replace it. Vidui is not ma'akiv. Rabbi Shimon Omer, l'chaper olav. The pasuk says the Sar La'azazel has to stand. Yom ad chai fnei Hashem l'chaper olav. What does l'chaper olav mean? Rashi says, "V'chapara mutelos olav hakasam adaber v'u avidui." The simple meaning of l'chaper olav means the kapara which applies to this particular sar. V'chapara zvar hakasam adaber. A kapara which comes about through words, through vidu. Therefore says Reb Shimon, vidu is ma'akiv. Torah clearly says, if he dies, you have to replace him. He has to be around during vidu. So this is the background, this is the basis of the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda, who says vidu is not me'akiv. L'chaper olav, that's speaking about the matan dam of his counterpart. Vidu is not me'akiv. Rabbi Shimon says l'chaper olav, his kapara. Vidu is me'akiv. So in conclusion, we actually have two machlokes here, which at first glance seem a bit unrelated. There's one shaila regarding vidu. Is it me'akiv or not? Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Shimon says yes. We have another shaila regarding hagrola. Is it me'akiv or not? Rabbi Shimon says no. And Rabbi Yehuda is going to be in the Gemara coming up. The Gemara is going to prove that according to Rabbi Yehuda, hagrola is me'akiv. So they're switched around. When it comes to hagrola, Rabbi Yehuda says ma'akiv, Rabbi Shimon says no. When it comes to vidu, Rabbi Yehuda says no, Rabbi Shimon says yes. Are they somewhat related? Tosfos maintains yes. There's a very close connection between the two. He explains like this, a beautiful pshat. Rabbi Yehuda holds that hagrola is ma'akiv. What does that tell you about the pair of goats? They have to be designated simultaneously through that hagrola process. Pick up the two lots, Hashem and Azazel, at once. We're dealing with a pair. We're dealing with one entity. It's sort of two sides of a coin. One Hashem, one Azazel. They're inseparable. And whatever happens to one, so to speak, happens to the other. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says that Yisrael Azazel doesn't really have his own matan dam. You just take him to the midbar, throw him down the cliff. He doesn't have his own matan dam, which is very important. And therefore, he learns the pasuk the way he does it. YOMA Hashem l'chaper olav means that the Yisrael Azazel has to experience, has to observe the matan dam of the Yisrael Hashem, which sort of helps him as well, is applied to him as well. He also joins that experience together with his counterpart. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, they assume their identities and their status through hagrola, which was a simultaneous application to both goats. They're one entity, one unit, and they serve together. So we see that hagrola leads to this interpretation of the pasuk that only matan dam is ma'akiv, because the chaper olav is referring to the hakrava process of the Lashem, which the Azazel also has to take part in, has to experience it, has to be there. Whereas according to Reb Shimon, it's the other way around. Hagrola is not me'akiv. He says you can just call them by name. This one's Lashem, this one's Azazel. Hagrola is a mitzvah, but if he chooses to do it verbally, that's okay. What does that tell you about their connection? They're loosely connected. I mean, you could do hagrola, but they're not so closely connected. They're not really considered one entity. They're two separate independent karbanos, so to speak. There's some sort of independence here. And therefore, Reb Shimon says, each one has to go through his own process. Yisrael Hashem needs to have matan damim. Yisrael Azazel needs to have his vidu. He can't sort of be yotzei by being around during the matan dam of his comrade. He needs his own process. He needs his own vidu. L'chaper olav. Kapara will tell us olav. That leads him to interpret the pasuk in this manner. He needs his vidu, and vidu is ma'akiv. So you see, the two things are very closely connected. Rabbi Yehuda says it's one entity. Hagrola is ma'akiv. They came about through a single process of hagrola. If so, the kapara of the Hashem is applied to Azazel as well. He has to be there during the kapara of the dam. But past that, he doesn't have to be. When it comes to Reb Shimon, hagrola is not me'akiv. If he wishes, he can just designate them separately. Hashem, Azazel. Each one has his own independent identity. In which case we say, each one has to go through his own personal process. Yisrael Hashem has to have kapara's dam. So Azazel must have his vidu. Vidu is me'akiv. Okay, let's go back to our discussion of whether or not hagrola is ma'akiv. Rabbi Yani says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi it's ma'akiv. We have another kasha, Toshma. Listen to this price. Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's students asked him, what about the following case? Allah Bisma. Suppose the lot which had the shame of Hashem on it, ended up in the Kohen Gadol's left hand, which was less than preferable, as we learned yesterday. Can you go ahead and transfer it over to his right hand? Amar Lam, he responded, Al titnu makim, let's look him lirdes. Don't afford an opportunity for the tzdukim. Some say minim, some say talmidav of Yeshu, talmidim of Yashke. Don't give them the opportunity to mock us, to laugh at us. Look, they're doing what they want. It's all arbitrary. They move from one hand to the next. Nothing is absolute. Nothing's real. Don't do it. Don't switch it over. So that was the price. Says the Gemara, Tai modal titnu mokim l'tzdukim leaders. Apparently, that's the concern we're dealing with. We don't want to give the tzdukim any room for mockery. But if not for that concern, be my guest. Go ahead and switch it over to the right hand. What do you mean? How can you do that? It's after the fact. You've already determined which goat is Lashem, which goat Lazazel. You know which one's Lashem? The one to his left. How did you say the Hagrola is Ma'akiv? It's an absolute procedure. Yekivan the Kavati Smoil. And once the lot, which was in his left hand, Lashem, determined that the goat to his left is the Lashem, how can you go just switch the tickets? Take the Lashem, bring it over to his right hand. It's done. It's like Hashem Rabbi Yana, who says Hagrola is absolute. Amar Rava, Hachika Amrila. Hachikam. No. Let's relearn the Bryce. This is what they asked Rabbi Akiva. Allah Hagoyel Bismoil. Suppose the Lashem ends up in his left hand, and the goat to his left has been established as a Lashem. I'm not going to change that. Maush Yachziru Loy. Ula Seiroi Limen. Can you go ahead and transfer that ticket over to his right hand together with its corresponding goat? I'm not switching the identity of the goats. We're not switching the designation. Of course, the one to his left has been determined as Lashem. But let's switch the entire thing around. Take the ticket and its goat and move it over to the right, and the one from the right switch to the left, so that the Lashem should end up in the right, which is a Siman Yaf. Omerlem, he responded, Al titnu makim, let's tukim lirdos. No, don't do it. Even though halachically there's no concern, you're just switching the position. But don't allow for the tzdukim, don't give them room to challenge the Torah. Rabbeinu Bechaye in Vayikra, Sefer Vayikra, Perik Tezayin, Pasuk Zayin, says a beautiful pshat. What does this Gemara mean? Don't leave room for the tzdukim, for the minim, for Talmid of Shel Yeshu to give us trouble. He says like this: the Oidev of the Zohar maintained that there are many powers, many gods in the world. The power of good, the power of evil, all independent of each other. And therefore they take a look at the Kohen Gadol, who found the Lashem in his left hand, and then goes and switches it to his right. What does that tell you? They'll claim, look, the right is the power of good, chesed, the left is the power of evil, it's smoil, it's din. And that's why they're switching the Lashem out of the left hand. It's out of his domain. Lashem is chesed, it belongs on the right. Left is out of his boundary. It's a different power. That's why they're so meticulous about placing Lashem on the right. No. Al titnu makim. Don't allow that to happen. Don't give them that opening. Because we believe, which is the truth, that it's all beyond Hashem. Hashem orchestrates everything. It's true, there are many powers in the world. Hashem allows for that. Hashem grants koyach to different malachim, etc. There's the power of chesed. There's the anhag of din and gvura, of tov and ra. But it's all ultimately bounded on by Hashem. It's sourced from Hashem. Hashem is the life of all lives. And even though it is preferred, it was l'chatchila to find the Shem Hashem on the right hand, that was a siman yafa, to show that Hashem, the midas hachesed, the Shem Havaya, is expressing itself completely with midas hachesed, which is represented through the right hand of the Kohen Gadol. But nevertheless, if it so turns out that the Shem Hashem ended up in his left, it's also fine. Shem Hashem can be anywhere. It's all Malay Kalaris Kevoida. So don't go switching things around. Don't cause confusion. Tashma, let's have another kasha. Once again, we're challenging Rabbi Yana, who maintained that a grola is ma'akiv. The Brisa says, Ilu nemar. It's a surah she'olav. The pasuk says, this is referring to the Sor Lashem. V'hikriv aron es ha-sor asher olav hagor Lashem. V'so chatas. Aaron will be makriv The soir asher olav agor l'Hashem, make it into a chatas. Says the Bryce. Ilu nemar es asor asher olav. The pasuk would delete the word olah, asher olah. Instead, would say asher olav. I would infer from this that he has to place the ticket on the girl on the soir. Tamad loima olah. The pasuk adds the word olah asher olah to tell you kivan she'olah. Once he picked it out of the box, shuveni tzarich. There's no longer a need to place it on the goat. End quote. That's the price. Lamai says more. What are we speaking about? He doesn't have to place it on the goat. It means to say it's not critical, or it's not even a mitzvah. Either a mitzvah. What is the price speaking about? That picking it out is a mitzvah, but placement is not a mitzvah. Michlal da hanocha mitzvah namila. It means to say only picking it out of the box is a mitzvah, but placement is not even a mitzvah. You can't even say that. There's a pasuk which says, "V'nasan aron ashnet." He's going to put the ticket on the goat. Elalav la'akiv. Apparently, the Bryce is in the context of la'akiv, and the Bryce is telling you that as far as being ma'akiv, the only thing that's ma'akiv is picking out of the box. But hanocha is not ma'akiv. Ushma mino hagrol ma'akva. We see clearly that hagrol is ma'akiv. Hanocha la ma'akva. Hanocha is not me'akiv, but Agrola is. That's right, Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rava hachikama. No. This is what the Bryce meant to say. Ilu nema asher olav. Had the pasuk only said asher olav without the word olah, hayisi oimer yenechen olav asher shchita. I would learn it to mean that after he picked the lots out of the box, he has to place the lot on the goat all the way until the shchita. He has to leave it there all throughout that time. Tamer lema asher olah. That's why the pasuk adds the word olah to tell you. Once you pick it out and you place it on the goat for a brief moment, that's sufficient. Once he placed it on the goat just for a brief period of time, that's sufficient. He doesn't have to keep it there until the shchit. But of course, we have no raya any longer that the hagrola is mi'akav. But it's not speaking about hagrola. The Bryce was simply speaking about the hanocha. You would think hanocha has to be all throughout, all the way till the shchita. Chiddush is no. Just take it out and put it down for a minute on the goat, and when you've been yaitzu your mitzvah. Tashma, let's bring one final right. That what? That hagrola is me'akiv. V'asou chatas. That's the end of that pasuk. So you have the girl. V'asou chatas. Hagoyrel oiseu chatas. Only through a girl can you establish this as being a chatas. Ve'en Hashem aseu chatas. But merely naming the korban verbally, that doesn't make it into a chatas. Why would I think otherwise? Sheyachal, perhaps I could suggest, using a kal v'chomer, that merely verbally naming the korban is sufficient. It's applied kal v'chomer. Ma b'mok shaloi kiddush hagirl. Since we find that throughout the year, regarding other korbanos, despite the fact that a girl doesn't work, we don't find a girl method working anywhere else by korbanos. Kiddush Hashem, still naming the korban works. You're naming it a oila, you name it a chatas, a shlam, it works. Malkum shekiddush hagirl, certainly here where the girl works in a din shekiddush Hashem, of course, naming the story would work. Talmud loima, the pasuk tells you no. Vaso chatas. Hagirl is a chatas. Vein Hashem is a chatas. You can only apply one method, a girl. But just merely naming the goats, chatas lazalot, that doesn't work. Now this is a Bryce and Teres Kohen. Stam Sifra Mani. An unnamed, anonymous Bryce and Teres Kohen, which is called Sifra. In accordance with whose shita was it authored? Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi brings the Gemara Sanhedrin that a Stam Sifra is presumed to be Rabbi Yehuda. So he's the author of this Bryce. V'katani, what does the Bryce say? Hagirl is a chatas. Vein Hashem is a chatas. Only via a girl method can you designate this as a chatas, but not merely by naming. Alma hagrola ma'akva. Apparently, hagrola is ma'akiv. Tiyufta demad Omar. Hagrola le ma'akva tiyufta. Indeed, this is a kasha refutation on the other shit Rabbi Yochanan. We see clearly from this price that hagrola is ma'akiv. So, conclusion. We discussed the concept of hagrola, which entails two stages: the aliyah metecha kalfi, picking out the tickets, and the hanocha, placement on the goats. Hanocha l'kuli am is not me'akiv, although a mitzvah. But not Yaakov. Regarding Hagrola, we had a machlekes. We actually had a double machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rida maintains Hagrola is Ma'akiv, as we just concluded, but Vidui on the Sar Mashtalech is not Ma'akiv. Rabbi Shimon maintains Hagrola is not Ma'akiv, whereas Vidui on the Sar Mashtalech is Ma'akiv. And we explained the name of Tosfos. The two discussions really are linked hand in hand. Hatzlacha Rabbah to you.